you had this really uncanny thing that you kept rolling forward.
Yeah, well, I have this optimism in everything I do that I like. I don't know. My friends have mentioned it. They're like, "How do you always see a positive?" I'm like, I don't know. I just don't like living in the negative, I guess.
No, I like it. It's good. It's funny. I've got some show notes here for those of you who aren't on camera and watching us live. I'm working on some show notes, and it's funny because there's one of these things I wanted to bring up, and I don't know if this is. I'm not trying to take over your show, but there was a thing that I wanted to bring up that I thought was kind of a funny thing. Is so as a parent, you're always looking for those moments where you're like, this kid's going to be okay. Like they might have just, shit the bed, ate paste, whatever, but you still want those moments where you're like, this kid's going to be all right. And you and I, we clashed a bit when you were younger, especially your elementary years. We clashed a lot because it's just so independent you were. But it was funny because as a parent, you want those letting go of the bike moment where you're like, okay, she's going to be fine. And I have some funny ones that stand out to me, and they're funny because they came to me as a parent in a moment where they're not the normal. So like a classic one is you and I at Bay Beach Park in Green Bay.
I have no recollection of this.
Okay. So Bay Beach is a little amusement park. And fun fact, your dad, I am kind of very scared of amusement park rides, roller coasters, things like that. And they have this little Ferris wheel. I mean, it's not like a 12-foot tall, but it's a 30-foot tall Ferris wheel. It is not something I was looking forward to do, but you know what? We got on there as a family. Nick got on with Mom. You got on with me. I'm on this thing, and I am terrified. Do not like this at all, but I thought I got to take one for the team. I got to get on there with my family, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just freaking out. And then I hear this little voice, and the little voice is saying, I don't like this part. I don't like this part. I don't like this part. I like this part. I like this part. I like this part.
Shut up!
And it was such a hilarious breath of fresh air for me because I was like, oh my God, it's that freaking simple. Because there was a part of the ride you enjoyed. And then you made me feel the same way. I was like, you're right. I do enjoy this part. And it was hilarious because, Maddie, you were 4. And it was just, I know this sounds like the simplest thing, but as a parent, I was like, she kind of logicked this through on her own. And I was so busy being terrified. I hadn't said boo to you. I hadn't tried to coach you through this and say, but clearly you were struggling and you just came up with your own shtick. So that was definitely one of those, she's going to be just fine moments. Afterwards, I was like, this girl's got some will to her. She does her own shtick.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So there's that one. Another one is the daddy don't pull it moment. You're just nodding at this.
Yes.
So for viewers at home, Maddie had gotten a owie and wanted a Band-Aid on it. And it was like the Band-Aid had been on there like 8 weeks and was crusty. And it was time.
You had to pry it off.
It was time for that to come off. And so I brought her up in the bathroom, set her on the counter. And you wanted nothing to do with it. And I was like, this is just something we got to do. And we're going to do this. And you were crying. And it was one of the rare moments you were wailing like a dog. And you're like, Daddy, don't pull it. Don't pull it. And so I was like, sweetheart, we just got to get this over with. And I went to pull it, and I was trying to talk you through, I'm just going to do this fast. It won't. Mm-hmm. If it hurts, it'll be quick, blah, blah, blah. And that thing was so damn old, it came off without even, a thing. And you went in just a dime. You went from crying to maniacal laughter. Like I was like, wow, maybe she's going to be an evil genius in the future. But again, it was funny to me because I looked at it and I was like, I loved how quickly you didn't wallow in sorrow. You didn't sit around upset. Once you realized, oh man, that thing came off easy, you went to full out laughing, and you went from, the worst mood I've ever seen you in to the best mood I've ever seen you in. And again, as a parent, I took comfort in just seeing you, make that jump.
Wow.
That simply,
Yeah.
It was a data point to me. It said somewhere in there, there's the right things are kicking together. I think you making me this fancy cocktail, this might make the list too.
I know how to make an old fashioned.
Sure. Distinguished young woman in high school.
I freaking hated that. Looking back,
You should have. When you came home and told us you were going to do it, I was like, what the I even went in and tried to talk you out of it. But you were so eyes on, I'm going to do this. And looking back, that was an enormous commitment of emotion, of time, of effort, of everything, and putting yourself out there. That was a big freaking deal. I couldn't have done it, man. I could not have done that. And so for me to see you commit yourself to something like that there wasn't a bikini part of the show, but there might as well have been, because you are up on stage and you're just presenting yourself to the crowd over and over, because you're doing a talent, you're doing this. I mean, it
went so far too as when you did your push-ups, you had to look, turn your head, and smile to the crowd after every push-up you did. Like, what the fuck? That shit's insane.
It was bizarre.
Where are the feminists?
Right. It was bizarre. And the fact that you leaned into that and you never had a bad attitude through it. Oh, God, I was just sweating bullets in the crowd watching you. But you did it. You did it smoothly. And, I said, wow, she's going to be all right. Watching you up at lacrosse, there's been plenty of little moments, you had a rough start. So, look, it's these moments, these let go of the bike moments. So when I hear about you peeing in the bushes and stuff like this, I go back to, thanks, Kaylee, by the way. I go back to, she's going to be all right, even if she pees in the bushes. She's going to be all right.
Oh, good and bad things, having you listen to the podcast.
Exactly.
So it's been great reminiscing about me, but my friends have had anyone that meets you just has a very fascination with you, especially my friends. And so I'm sure everybody's here to hear about you. Oh. So, getting into a little bit about your childhood. So you grew up in Oklahoma. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, man. It was different. So technically born here in Wisconsin, lived in Menominee Falls through kindergarten, moved to Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma. And this is, 70s and early 80s. Very different. I mean, so they filmed the movie The Outsiders while I was in high school. And Tex and The Outsiders, that is kind of what I grew up in. And so there was, first off, it was like a lawless land. I mean, short of people riding horses to school, there was fights every day, sanctioned fights that the teachers would even come watch behind the cafeteria pretty much. Not the teachers wouldn't come every day, but, it's just fights and cowboy mentality was just the norm there. I'm not saying I was a cowboy, but if you grow up in that society, it's just different. And our high school had, we didn't call them greasers, we called them hoods. We had hoods and socias. We did call them socias, and you were either a soch or a hood. And so,
what were you?
So this is funny because in somebody, I never found out who did this. There was a book that came out with, like, before the yearbook that had remember when things, and you could put pictures and quotes, and somebody put a quote in there because by the time I graduated, I was as sociy as soch comes. I think I was on the student council and all that, but somebody wrote, remember when James Vander Heyden was a hood? And I was like, wow! And I shit you not, I had so many people come up to me and be like, well, this is a joke, right? And I'd be like, no, actually, yeah, I did hang with all those guys. And they'd just be like, what? And so it was funny because Tulsa was like The Outsiders. You had, you had extremely poor, and you had extremely rich, because that was where all the oil executives, a lot of oil companies were based out of Tulsa. And so you had rich oil executives. And then I went to a school called Jenks, and we had a large rural area that, I mean, we had as dirt poor as you can imagine, like tin shacks.
Wow.
I mean, I'm like, you haven't seen, I have never seen poor like this in Wisconsin. You got to be down south, and down south 30 years ago to see this type of poor. So we would have kids that, you knew they didn't shower all week, and then you'd have a kid that drove his BMW to school.
Jesus.
All in the same school, So it was different. It was really different. I think another big factor there was the Bible Belt factor.
The Bible thumpers.
Oh my God.
Do they compare to the Baptists up the street or no?
Oh, these guys, they're the minor leagues. The guys up the street are the minor leagues. The Oklahoma Baptists were hardcore. They were always trying to save you. That used to crack me up. And so there was this standard thing they would go through. If you start the week on Sunday, they would go get church in. They'd get fired up. They talk shit at you.
It's like a pep rally.
Right. They talk shit at you Monday through Wednesday about, how they were with God and you weren't. Then by Thursday, they had lightened up. Friday night, they were the biggest, drunkest dumbasses, getting in fights, doing everything ridiculous. And then, you didn't see them usually Saturday night. And by Sunday, they would go back to church. They would do... So this was big back when I was in high school. They would do rock and roll record burnings because rock and roll was the devil's music.
Jesus.
And so they would get these traveling preachers that would come through, and they'd get these kids all fired up into a tizzy, and they would build a big barn fire, and they would throw their albums into the fire to burn. Jeez. And so what was hilarious was, they might do this on a Saturday or Sunday. And then by Tuesday, they were pissed, and they were going and rebuying their Journey album because it was a cool album, or their Zeppelin album or whatever. So Oklahoma was just different, man. It was just... Yeah. There's things I loved about it, don't get me wrong, but there was also, in some regards, it was a cultural oasis. Like when I moved up here, I was just wowed by Wisconsin.
I bet, yeah.
Because, it was kind of a dry state. Technically, you could not buy liquor... you could not buy individual drinks. You could not go into a restaurant and by law and buy a gin and tonic.
What did you have to get?
They had ways around it. So in theory, the way the law worked down there, you were supposed to bring your own bottle of gin. They would write your name on it. You'd give it to the bartender, and then you could sit down either at the bar or even if you're in the restaurant, and you would order a gin and tonic, but then you would say, I want it from Vander, Heyden, from Madison's bottle. Well, the reality is what you would do is we'd walk in the door and they'd say, what are you going to be drinking tonight? And just whatever, loosely. If you said whiskey, they'd write your name down and stick it to any old bottle of whiskey. They'd still sell you liquor by the drink. Oh. And then, every once in a while the cops would come in and bust it. But again, it's just, you think about Wisconsin. This whole state's about drinking. And I grew up in a state where, not drinking was the thing.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's crazy. So now, you've kind of seen the cycle of where, this country cowboy idealistic is, popular again. You were shocked that mullets are attractive. So how do you feel about that, modern age?
There's a movie, I don't know if you remember it, where it's Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson. I keep wanting to say Jack Nicklaus. He's the golfer. Jack Nicholson. But where I think it's called A Few Good Men. But there's a point where Tom Cruise as a lawyer is coming at big tough guy Jack as an army guy. And at one point, Jack is like, "You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall." And my point is you need badasses in society. You just do. And if we're all a bunch of pussies, it's not going to go well. True. And so I've always felt strongly you need a mother figure and a father figure to raise a kid. And, there's a comedian that has a joke. that he got yelled at by two gay guys after his show, that he said that. And he said, you know what?